I believe it was Robert Hughes who first said, "The greater the artist, the greater the doubt. Perfect confidence is granted to the less talented as a consolation prize." In 1893, famed Czech composer Antonin Dvorak, I just destroyed that poor man's name, dropped a big one on the classical music world. The New World Symphony, and within it, arguably most famous of all, was Symphony No. 9. For many years, at the Indies level, Gunther, known back then as Volta, with a good 70 pounds of extra lard on his frame, used this fine example of symphonic fun as his entrance theme. The classical vibes went along with his old-fashioned, no-nonsense, but somewhat refined European persona as the Ring General. Since graduating to a more moderate carb diet and the big leagues, though, Gunther has moved on from this song, and tragically, in his wake, someone else got their hands on it. Someone who has now ensured the song will forever be tainted with the pain of CEO, CEO, CEO. Or should I say, Sia-Ia-Oa. Why must the Sia-Ia-Oa chant be locked within that song, I hear some of you ask? Surely, if Mercedes Moné was over enough, fans would just chant it willy-nilly, so excited to see her. Maybe after a little bit of leading from the woman herself, initially, before it catches on, you know. It's a very good question. And the answer is very simple. She's not that over. Turn back your clocks a whole decade to 2015. The WWE was going through a largely, incredibly lame phase of content. Seth Rollins was cut off at the knee, no pun intended, as WWE champion, with the booking constantly undermining his fairly high-quality work as a heel, ensuring he bombed hard at the box office. Beyond John Cena just randomly becoming an indie-style work-rate king as the US champ, the shows were lacking in much of anything fresh or exciting. Roman Reigns was being run through nursery rhyme humiliation rituals on the microphone. Bray Wyatt was already a choke artist. Daniel Bryan had a bad case of Kurt Angle neck and Joe Biden brain. Randy Orton was as stale as old bread. So what did the WWE do? Provide more innovative booking, edgier content, and pushing exciting new stars, maybe? No, of course not. How silly. More women's stuff. Take that, patriarchy. Or is it Marcriarchy? You see, at the time, some heavily rehearsed women's matches in NXT had been of a passable to good quality, which apparently meant they were the biggest thing since the NWO first formed or something. And now, regular, casual WWE viewers who couldn't give a single solitary toss about what was going on in Triple Nose's Little Minor Leagues show were about to get clunked over the head with a hammer known simply as the Women's Revolution trademark. In the good old days of the Attitude and Ruthless Aggression eras, the Divas division was very much the Gooners division. Non-stop TNA, and let me tell you, I do not mean the wrestling promotion. Once the P-gay era blew in the closing stretch of 2008, however, Goonerism was cancelled, which obviously is actually a good thing. It's just unfortunately what it was replaced with here was not. The Divas had to dress very, very slightly more modestly. The Playboy deal, long before it became Gay Boy when a chick with a surprise in his knickers posed for them, was cancelled. And they had to wrestle these dollars dishwater, filler, toilet break matches with childish storylines, if you can even call them storylines, that no one in their right mind would ever be interested in, including the poor people having to perform them on screen. So bad that the universal insult from the WWE universe to male matches they hated was "We want divas." Ooh. I'm not sure there's ever been a more hurtful chant than that. Imagine being a superstar like a John Cena or a Randy Orton. You make millions. You have fans all over the world, or so you thought. And then they go and drop that nuke on you. Some people would crumble. Some might go the way of a certain Christopher Benoit in the face of such hurt. Brutal. Just brutal stuff. Anyways, the women's rectal explosion. A cringe fest where Stefanepo McNo-Talent demanded fans give a Daniel Bryan yes chant against their will, as she pretended it was all because of her we were getting this trash. Not like she was on the booking team during the golden days of Naughty's bra and panties matches. Oh no, no, no. And one of the key characters in this shindig of everyone patting themselves on the backs like they just found the cure for some incurable disease was the legit butch, Sasha Banks. According to NXT fans, Banks was the second coming of a technical maestro like, say, her hero, Eduardo Guerrero. No shame in liking Eddie Guerrero, by the way, fantastic wrestler, immensely talented, and it's cool if someone takes some inspiration from a performer whose work they admired, fair enough. You know what is not cool, though? Well, making being a fan of a long-dead star half your gimmick. You see, by the summer of 2016, a year later, with 1 year, as I just said, of main roster action behind her, or well, a year minus several months on the sidelines for no discernible reason, which was a recurring pattern throughout her time in the WWE. But we'll get to that later. By the summer of 2016, let me just gather myself, it became clear there were only certain things Banks could do on the mic. Here we go. Mention making history, mention Eddie Guerrero, mention one of those two things again, do a little dance, completely fail to pronounce a word as basic as me.
Allow Mia. Listen to Mia. And that's Mia.
Rinse and repeat. For casual fans who didn't sit through much beyond the big league shows, the relentless hype was perplexing. Sure, the triple threat match with Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch at WrestleMania 32 had been well received, but overall, rather than worthwhile storytelling, the women's revolution was a buzz phrase, with buck-stick booking that just told you to like these talents, told you they were best in the world, wedging them into random factions and setups without even a hint of basic storytelling and character development when they first showed up, and very little to correct that problem onwards. PR nonsense and tokenism in wrestling form. And as her and Charlotte Flair sauntered through butch-prone, first-time ever women's versions of classic gimmick bouts such as Hell in a Cell, where many audience members got up and left rather than watch it became clear that sometimes, frankly, men are better than women at certain things, and vice versa, of course, obviously. And many fans were okay with a little more of a traditional status quo on the old gender bender front. In the years that followed, it became clear that old Vince McMahon and his yes-men did not see megastar potential in Sasha Banks, despite often getting huge fan reactions, in fairness. The legit boss, whatever that even means, was booked at a notch below the other four boring women, unable to land a long title run on either show, and frequently locked up in the mid-card and on jobber duty. This decade changed that just a bit, with Thunderdome-era WWE deciding to rely heavily on Bayley and Sasha Banks as one of its premier acts. Ratings were comically low throughout this period, with housebound fans sooner watching anything than the utterly bizarre aesthetic of screen-time audience faces and sound effects to make up for the banned live crowds. For Banks, though, it meant finally landing a singles title run that went longer than a couple of weeks, and made space for her to actually enjoy a few successful defenses before dropping the gold to Bianca Belair at WrestleMania 37 and returning to mid-card purgatory and surprise absences. The second of the two-night WrestleManias that have come to be the norm this decade, 37 let the pair headline night one, with Roman Reigns, Edge and Daniel Bryan giving fans, frankly, the real main event on night two, and Drew McIntyre opting to have his WWE title bout with Bobby Lashley open the show on the first night. Quite possibly the only reason they got the headlining spot for that evening in the first place. And while the match itself was perfectly fine from a work rate perspective, with Belair being so damn strong that she could cover for a lot of Banks' usual butchy high spots, the bout was a glad-handing self-pat on the back, with both of them tearing up and breaking kayfabe before the opening bell. It's one thing to do that after the final bell, but beforehand, beyond lame. Look, it's fair enough to be emotional about a major career and life moment, but save the waterworks for after the show in the back with your friends and family. You're in character. People are paying to see you in character. Could you imagine if Stone Cold Steve Austin had gotten all misty-eyed at WrestleMania 14? The ref is about to call for the bell to start the match. Austin pulls an ugly crying face. Backstage, Undertaker says to hell with Austin and he leaves. There'll be no beating up of Shawn Michaels if he doesn't do the job. Mike Tyson, ringside, just gets into the ring willy-nilly and sends crybaby Austin to the floor with a left hook for a laugh as Vince McMahon's hardened head explode backstage. WCW wins the war, everyone forgets about WWF in time. All because Austin cried rather than be a professional and commit to character and performance. Shocking. That would have been just shocking. Fortunately, Steve Austin was a professional. That never happened. Anywho, that match was the end of Banks being a relatively relevant figure in the WWE for the most part. Another curious absence over the summer led to an official return to Midsville, and worst of all, a demotion to the women's tag division, a division that absolutely no one on earth, bar Banks and Naomi apparently, cared about in the slightest at the time. Everything changed in 2022 when the women's tag team titles, token titles devoid of that funny little thing some call prestige, which is the case with many titles, men's and women's across all of professional wrestling of course, became the epicenter of a huge argument between Banks, her trusty sidekick, not Jey Uso's wife, and the WWE's top brass. The result was simple. Sasha Banks left to pursue new opportunities in Japan, in AEW, and in acting.
We've been hitting them pretty hard. They scan for life forms as a precaution before pushing back.
While Naomi left to work in TNA, and then just go back to the WWE, where after a prolonged period of jobbing, she's now actually found quite a lot of personality this year, so that's nice. I guess it all worked out in the end. I guess Banks, though, did just stop returning her calls once they split from the house that Vince built. Now, the WWE promotional machine had done a remarkable job in convincing many that Sasha Banks was some kind of elite-level talent. No pun intended. A variety of smoke and mirrors were employed to get the job done, including relentless glazing from the commentary team. Sure, she had a botch a minute in her matches, and every second move looked like it killed her, could barely string a sentence together, and was more injury-prone than a brittle-boned window. But Michael Cole just told you she's an all-time great. Is that clear, Mark? Without the short leash of the WWE's creative team and the powerhouse of the WWE's marketing team, Sasha Banks, now Mercedes Moné or Money, whatever, was about to sink or swim on her own accord. So for this video I'll be discussing a few key moments in her post-WWE career to provide an overall discussion. Why? Why am I not just covering every last thing? Because making a 5-hour video on Mercedes Moné would be proof I should just go to Switzerland and get euthanized. Good grief. Anyways, Wrestle Kingdom 17. Japanese wrestling is a little different to what we're used to in the West. Who'd have thought? Traditionally, many promotions have been gender-specific, boasting either all-male or all-female rosters. In recent years, New Japan, and to an even lesser extent Pro Wrestling Noah, have half-heartedly challenged this notion, wheeling out performers from promotions such as Stardom occasionally to contest over a nothing belt the promotions seem to forget they even have half the time. And at Wrestle Kingdom 17, after a 5-minute toilet break for New Japan fans, Mercedes Moné, a surname no one knew how to pronounce for the first month, arrived, giving us all what was essentially a one-note stripper dance intro, never progressing to the point where the actual stripping begins though, so don't get too excited. Just getting in the ring for what I can only describe as an attempt at a gory bum into a DDT that she didn't get all of. Now that's quite a difficult move to execute right there, getting all of them. You've got to act as the base for your opponent, take their whole weight, and then rotate them into a protected head bump, and do it all smoothly and explosively enough to convince the audience it's a finisher. Why would a petite performer like Moné, who typically has the size disadvantage between the ropes, attempt this? In the whole time she's been hitting it, from then all the way up to now, it's been a disaster zone of a move horribly lacking in any semblance of impact, or worse still, believability. Anyways, Moné's brief adventures as the ace of New Japan's unwanted women's division no one asked for were short-lived at this point, when she got horribly injured, again very unfortunate, and was out indefinitely. Again. And finally, after months of recovery, we get eventually to her AEW debut in January 2024. And here's where it all quickly goes off the rails even more than what I just mentioned. A freak injury is no one's fault, it just happens. Everything that comes next, though, well, certain people can be blamed for it. In order to cash in on the hype surrounding yet another former WWE talent stepping into the all-elite zone, the AEW top brass initially brought Moné in as a babyface to make the most of the fan interest she was receiving. So what did Moné do to maintain that fan positivity surrounding her arrival? Essentially, she put her leg over her own head, tucked her chin, and licked her own ass on live TV until the cows came home. A video, seemingly done without irony, compared the career of henchwoman number 2 from The Mandalorian, a dead show everyone stopped caring about, the moment Lizzo and Jack Black, good grief, rolled their hideous, gelatinous, fat-assed frames into view of... Oh, and also women's wrestler Sasha Banks, not just henchwoman number 2 from The Mandalorian. Sasha Banks from WWE as well, they mentioned that. To pioneers of chick crap, like Amelia Earhart and the like. Oh, who might have been a man, by the way, when I was doing some research for this video. There's a fun conspiracy rabbit hole to go down. I'm not going to do it here, but there is stuff out there about it, that's all I'm going to say. Some, I believe you call them transvestigators, will probably be able to give you more info on it. Very interesting, very eye-opening. Now you listen to a segment like that, someone coming out with a B-grade career, singing their own praises, comparing themselves to figures of history, you're probably just thinking it sounds like a comedy heel. A delusional, vainglorious clown who thinks they're the face. That's the joke, right? That's the humor. That's where the heat is. Unfortunately, at that point, her subsequent promo made clear she genuinely expected worship from the fans, talking herself up further without even a hint of self-awareness. But burial. Be reasonable. Don't be a merc. This could be part of the act. Okay, sure. Ignoring the fact she has all the acting talent of Jaden Smith getting directed by Tommy Wiseau, let's examine the shocking evidence the WWE provided years ago of her completely delusional view of herself. Stone Cold Steve Austin. A mixed bag of interviews. Often he's not a bad interviewer himself, but some of his interviews have really gone off the rails, or just revealed rather strange sides of his guests. From Dean Ambrose revealing himself as mentally retarded and unable to hold a coherent conversation, to Paige randomly showing her bra for the entire time in a low-hanging top as she told old Stone Cold, already on wife number 4, she used to be in love with him.
I was like in love, I'm gonna embarrass myself. I was in love with you. Like, man, this is a guy coming down and quack bite, drinking biz, flipping people off. I was like, this is madness.
The rattlesnake has often been driven to chug IPA from the sheer, overwhelming awkwardness of his guests. And Honda Euros was no exception, spouting incoherent rants about wanting to be on Vince McMahon's level. And then, most disturbing of all, revealing she couldn't differentiate between herself and the character she played.
And I really, really lost myself because for a good 7 years, I didn't even hear my real name. I couldn't even look at myself. I didn't even know who the hell I was.
As if she was some kind of elite-level method actor who dives deep into her characters to bring them to life, often at the expense of her own well-being, like Daniel Day-Lewis, or Christian Bale, or Charlize Theron when she played that lesbian serial killer lady. Only where those guys and girl have frequently committed themselves so fully to roles that they become wholly unrecognizable. Very impressive. Banks in WWE was simply making a history-er, Eddie Guerrero-er. Fake laugh, little hip jiggle dance. Alright, the dance is okay, but all that other stuff was not. If you can't differentiate that beyond basic character from yourself, I'm afraid it's very sad. You've got a big problem upstairs.
No, he said, I'm going to give you 30 days to think about it. And I took more than 30 days.
There's a word for that. What is it again? Ooh, that's right. Unprofessional. Liability. Nuisance. There's a few. And there's more. And for all those clowns who'll think I'm being insensitive, this goof gets a dream job, her dream job, by her own account. Massive accomplishment, very cool. And is sad because what? People know her by her ring name in the general public? F*** off. A very good friend of mine from high school. He wanted to be a filmmaker, big dream. Like Quentin Tarantino or Paul Thomas Anderson or someone like that, you know. He went to film school, he worked hard, he was quite creative to be fair to him. Ultimately, it didn't really go his way. Because obviously these dream jobs are a 1 in a million to break into, even for those with high-level talent. His girlfriend left him shortly after uni. He moves back in with his parents, and he winds up having to work at a mortuary.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Where he sees dead bodies, including babies. He found it very upsetting, can't say I blame him. He slumps into alcoholism and other addictive behaviours. Eventually, he's just not fit for that job. He's still living with the parents, now he's on the dole, or welfare, whatever you want to call it. And life is passing him by. Last I saw him, he was a dishevelled mess, teetering on the edge of a total meltdown, unable to find work, and under pressure to clear out from 2 boomer parents who just want to go on holiday in Gibraltar indefinitely or something. Now that is pretty sad. That is something to have a meltdown over. My point is, this here, not my unfortunate friend, who, to be clear, I still check up on frequently and make sure to stay in touch with, this here with Monet Moans is prima donna nonsense from someone who does not have to live in the harsh, painfully boring reality of the grind set real world.
I'm not a super fan. I'm a businesswoman in this business. And that's where I'm at. I'm at a whole different level. I eat steak like Vince McMahon with vegetables. Like him.
Yes.
Because I can be that.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm at. And if I see myself where I want to see myself, I'm at Vince McMahon's level. And that's just that.
Wow. Vincent Kennedy McMahon, okay. The man who reshaped professional wrestling, who terminated the territory system en route to making his own style of wrestling a global entertainment phenomenon. She's on that level, okay. Do you book? Do you promote? Let's look at this YouTube channel of mine, right? It's less than 5k subscribers, nothing channel. Little hobby channel for some silly wrestling fan to have a laugh a couple of times a week, right? Now imagine if I just randomly compared myself to, Penguin Zero, or Dave Dobrik, whatever the hell his name is, or Logan Paul. These guys with these huge YouTube followings. What would you think of me? You'd think I was an idiot, wouldn't you? And rightly so. It's always good to aim high in life, just to be clear. But there's aiming high, and then there's just pure, unfiltered delusions heading full-on into mental illness territory. And with all of this, we come to realise that her debut segment in AEW, where she paraded herself around like the second coming of Emily Pankhurst or something, man, that Pankhurst has a lot to answer for, was not healing it up. It was not humorous. Oh no. You were seeing extreme delusions play out in real time. Well, real time if you watched it live, at least. Say what you will about Tony Khan's booking. One thing where he has frequently shown considerably more respect towards his talent than WWE is in the promos. AEW wrestlers are not, by most accounts, tightly scripted the way WWE talent have often been over the years. They are not handed ludicrous, childish scripts to memorize a few hours before showtime, probably written by some idiot failed TV writer whose dream of stinking up Saturday Night Live with their crap jokes never came to fruition. No, in AEW, while obviously the talent are booked to take promos and segments in certain directions, they're not treated like mentally deficient theatre kid idiots either, despite often behaving like them. And over the years, talents such as MJF, Christian Cage, Hangman Page, Swerve Strickland, and even Britt Baker, just to name a few, have managed to excel on the mic at different points in their careers and really flesh out their persona. Apparently Mercedes Moné wasn't ready to not be a scripted butt on the telly though, and brought her own personal scriptwriter along for her segments. That's right. Someone else is actually being paid for the mic work of Mercedes Moné.
Really?
You know?
Not really.
No, really.
Really?
These cumbersome promos that are barely delivered the way a human being might talk, where she swallows or mispronounces half the words in her lines are scripted and written up. Whoever this writer is, may they never get work in show business or anywhere else ever again, for the sake of show business or anywhere else. AEW fans who were initially very excited to see yet another WWE castaway washing up on all elite shores, quickly realized their precious Tony had made a dreadful, truly dreadful mistake. In the time since that unspeakable debut segment where she wore a portion of Bam Bam Bigelow's ass on her head, Bugatti rupees has ripped off Kenny Omega's belt collector gimmick. Here's the thing with that, while Omega's actual AEW World title run had some great moments, like his feuds and matches with Christian Cage, Bryan Danielson, and Hangman Page, to name a few, very few fans actually cared about all the other belts he picked up during that time. In fact, at the time, TNA's already comically low ratings plummeted even further. I didn't realize that was possible when the cleaner got his hands on their top prize. Holding a selection of random belts from lesser promotions does not carry the same prestige as carrying the #1 belt of a big promotion. In Omega's case, the actual AEW World title was a big deal, sure. A lot of those other things he was holding meant next to nothing to most fans, and did little to build his character, often just serving as an anchor to his character work and especially to his entrances. In Moné's case, unfortunately, it is even worse, because even the AEW title she won means almost nothing. The Jade Cargill Championship has not been a big deal since Jade Cargill stopped holding it. On top of that are a horde of cheap-looking nothing belts from abroad she paraded around like infinity stones, as fans are left scratching their heads at the significance of half of them. Her career-threatening injury the year prior had come opposite Willow Nightingale in a New Japan match. Not that it was really Nightingale's fault as such. Moné seemingly just slipped off the top rope recklessly in one of her 100 botches a match, only this one did not end well. But it was played up. A year later in AEW, where a lot of fans probably hadn't even watched the New Japan event where the injury occurred, like Nightingale had taken Moné out. Despite being a natural babyface, Nightingale was in an odd, somewhat heel-like position due to a botch a year ago that really wasn't even her fault. And this match they had for the title back at last year's Double or Nothing, it got some acclaim. You see, the two of them, they put a lot of effort into an action-packed, ambitious, work-rate-focused match. Great. Very good mind frame in any performance-based industry to test your limits and give your audience as big of a show as possible. The only problem was that everything looked disjointed and fake, overly choreographed even by modern wrestling standards. By extension, far from a hard-hitting fight, you're left with a clumsy, quite dangerous dance routine, sort of like Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence near the end of Silver Linings Playbook. A highly acclaimed film at the time that has rightfully been re-evaluated as overrated nonsense, with a tastelessly trivial approach to mental illness in its hokey, forced romance narrative. But anyway, that's totally irrelevant. Back in 2016, Zack Sabre Jr. had a brief foray into the WWE. Praised for his old-fashioned World of Sport technical wrestling style, the English rising star failed to land all that much of an impression on WWE fans, and worse still, the folks in the back. William Regal, no stranger to old-school British catch-can wrestling himself, was purportedly less than impressed by ZSJ. Same went for Fit Finlay. Rather than being intrigued by the vegan technician's inventive mat work, they were appalled by the blatantly worked, choreographed, telegraphed nature of it, even supposedly suggesting that it just looked outright gay.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, not at all.
I bring this up because Moné's matches throughout her career, but especially since coming to AEW and other promotions where the short, safety-conscious leash of the WWE is nowhere to be found, have struggled with this painfully, obviously rehearsed look and feel. Maybe not the gay thing,
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
but everything else. Everyone knows wrestling is fake, but the best action nearly always still takes a crack at letting audiences suspend their disbelief, even if just a little bit, and get immersed in the story unfolding between the ropes. When every second moment is a cooperative effort, teetering on disaster, where chins are barely tucked and heads are splatting awkwardly, where clumsy strikes wind up being stiff potato shots that look bad and probably hurt like hell. What exactly are we doing here? Fast forward a couple of months, and Kern and Moné have wisely pivoted to heel Moné. Camille, an enormous male-to-female an organic women's performer, dead. Alleged women's wrestler Camille is now Moné's bodyguard. Here's the thing with bodyguards. If they're big and strong and dangerous enough to protect the champ from danger, why don't they just go after the championship themselves? This was a key part of the classic all-time great feud between Batista and Triple H in 2005. For years, fans and wrestlers and pundits alike wondered who would finally provide an official end to the Triple Nose reign of terror on Monday Night Raw. And this became a part of the angle, as Batista, Triple H's buddy and enforcer, he's heavy, who he relied upon to help him to do his dirty work, realized he was the man for the job after all. He was the one to stop Triple H. Triple H was pure evil, and Batista, realizing he wanted more from his career than just being a henchman to some scumbag, realizing he wanted to be, and more importantly, could be better, made for a seminal, classic babyface turn that still hits hard today. AEW actually did an excellent bodyguard angle with Wardlow and MJF back in 2022. There, it was made clear MJF was paying Wardlow a fortune to work for him and had arranged for his work in AEW. Essentially, Wardlow was his employee, not the company's. And there was no belt up for grabs or insight, just an increasingly personal beef between the pair that eventually led to Wardlow turning face and gaining his freedom after a prolonged series of torments and attacks from MJF. And with the crowd firmly behind him, babyface Wardlow reached superstardom. Well, I mean, he got to be, he was TNT champion a few times, and then he was in that Adam Cole thing. I think he still works there. Anyways, in this case, Camille randomly turned up to protect a woman half her size rather than gun for her title. Okay, here's the problem. Ford Fiesta Pesos' challengers, many of whom were just nobodies from Japan, us pig westerners, had never heard of, got to beat on this heavyweight man-sized alleged woman before her pint-sized bus picked up wins on them. This Camille could have been brought in as an unstoppable force in the women's division, someone who could have maybe just maybe tried to fill the void left by Jade Cargill. Instead, anchored by the legit Butch, she was a muted undercarder, a great big jobber who quickly faded out of the promotion completely and rather mysteriously. A prospect, apparently, wheeled in, jabronified, no payoff, buried, and goofed in service of the CEOA before vanishing as quickly as she'd appeared. Brilliant stuff, way to get a new talent over right there. And during Camille's blink and you'll miss it run, the short-lived ace of AEW's women's division, Britt Baker, DMD, that little finger-pointing thing no longer over or remembered, more like J-O-B, am I right? J-O-B.
What a story, Mark.
Baker makes a surprise return to screens for a feud with Toyota Dollars. In this day and age, standard storylines just don't seem to be enough for talent, as many have leapt on the worked shoot bandwagon in the wake of the truly tragic demise of what little was left of kayfabe on screen this millennium. Baker had already got locked up in the worked shoot style during her feud with Paige, or Soraya, whatever her name was in AEW, where Baker rinsed all the former WWE talents coming in. Paige went on this bizarre rant on all of the mid-card jobber ectoplasm she'd had shot all over her face. I mean, all these hard bumps she'd taken in the ring and stuff. Baker was the face. Regardless of intention, AEW fans wanted to support the homegrown act, and no one was all that thrilled to see the biggest embarrassment to the WWE, this side of Alberto Del Rio's steroid stack, beat their chosen women's star. With Moné, well, obviously Moné has never embarrassed herself, or the main company she worked for the way Paige frequently did. But there was still enough real-life shenanigans for Baker to bring up during their contract signing segment, trashing Moné for becoming a bland, loudmouth clout chaser, milking Tony Khan for money, whilst doing lazy, awkward character work.
Before there was a CEO, there was a DMD.
Sure enough, once again, fans were all in on Baker, even with the extended absence she'd had beforehand, especially when comparing her promos, spoken with clear-cut confidence and even a bit of conviction, to Moné's, spoken like a toddler, learning English as a second language, while struggling with a badly blocked nose.
Carter! Please say hello to your CEO.
You see, the early days of AEW had encouraged and even endorsed hardcore loyalty amongst the promotion's fanbase, an us versus them mentality as the budding promotion locked horns with NXT every Wednesday. WWE's doomed attempt to take down the then very exciting fledgling promotion full of midgets and old Chris Jericho by pitting its black and gold minor leagues against them proved to be a huge moment in recent wrestling history. AEW's success in this regard helped to pave the way for its popularity throughout 2021 and 2022. Well, 2022 until a certain outburst occurred.
Show of hands. Who here fancies themselves as journalists?
Opening it up to a wave of interest from WWE talent who defected throughout 2021. And even now, all these years later, as AEW has largely lost that car crash TV identity that made it special for a brief spell, its ride-or-die fans still abide by that competitive us versus them culture. Still oddly protective of the shows and their views on the ever-changing rosters. Regardless of fan interest or preferences, however, the result of the showdown between the Sia and Dr. Britt Baker, J.O.B., was never in doubt. Unfortunately, it does appear that AEW rings are very dangerous for Mercedes Moné. Something about the texture of the mat is very rough on her back, you see, meaning she cannot, under any circumstances, lie on the mat for anything more than 2 seconds. As you can imagine, that makes jobbing an uphill battle, so every last talent twiddling their thumbs waiting to rejoin the actual women's title scene has to do the honourable thing and eat a loss to the TV channel champ in the meantime. Whether it's formerly over talents like Britt Baker who are seemingly on their slow, painful way out the door, or nobodies only Marks and Moné want to see in the promotion, like whoever in the bluest of blue hells, Emi Sakura, and the like are. Despite the many criticisms, fan backlash, and general embarrassment of her output, Mercedes Moné's push continues unabated in the land that Tony Khan's father's money built. Why, you might ask? Well, it's very simple. Tony Khan probably can't afford to not continue with it. Sometimes you might hear a big star like a Roman Reigns or a John Cena gets paid a lot for the work they do, millions of dollars. And even though it sounds like a lot given they work very limited schedules, you know a quick look at their drawing power explains why they get those big boy paychecks. In the case of Mercedes Moné, poor Tony Khan seemingly fell for the online hype, perpetuated by psychotic superfans with 30 burner accounts each on X, all praising Mercedes Moné as the greatest of all time. And a draw on the level of Stone Cold Steve Austin or Hulk Hogan or something. And while anyone with half a brain and the ability to just watch back some shows and read the figures could tell you that was laughable, it appears Jacksonville Dixie got worked, dropping an utterly extortionate amount of money in Moné's lap to come and work for him, or rather, for her to come and make him work for her. Cruising comfortably into the millions per year bracket, Moné also gets some creative control.
Yes, I have creative control, but I work with Tony Khan very closely, so it's great. It's a great combo.
This sounds like a great deal, right? The kind of deal any sane, decent talent would be very grateful for. So how did Moné repay Khan & Co. for their big-time investment in her? By revealing she'll be back in WWE someday. Oh, yes.
I know I'm going to be back there one day. Go. Okay, so it's not over. But I have a lot of unfinished business in wrestling.
Isn't that wonderful? Just signing with a promotion and already confirming they're a mere pit stop on the road back to your old joint. Great, wonderful. A whole lot of respect right there. Just what you want to hear in Khan's shoes, or anyone in AEW, really. But hey, what with that massive name value of hers, at least you'll bring some eyes to the product, right? Right?
Wrong.
Trying to start a Sia chant at Comic-Con that
almost
no one else joins in on is Loserville. Yeah, there's a mall about 20 minutes away from my place. I might as well walk over there and start a burial chant next time, and we'll see how that goes. And on top of disrespecting AEW, let's remember how much she disrespects the fans. And I don't just mean when they're gaslit into having to pretend botchy matches full of awkward head landings and potato punches and incoherent promos aren't
-5 stars!
Oh no. And finally, don't worry, this will be over soon.
You finished? Can I go now?
Can you believe this was just going to be a 15-minute video originally? As an appalling journalist once said, plans change. Anyways, as if all that wasn't enough, next up, shameless exploitation of your most pathetic and vulnerable fans. Ooh yeah, for just $99.99 a month, you can be text buddies with the CEO. If you have $99.99 a month to burn, you could try giving it to a charity. You could just save up for a kick-ass holiday down the line. You could lock it up in an ISA account. But no, spend it on what is at best an imposter and more likely an AI, pretending to be Mercedes Moné. Is the fortune little Tony is paying not enough? Apparently not. How pathetically greedy can you be? This is all an embarrassment to AEW, and for those thinking the bigwigs in WWE might miss her or wish she was still there, well, how's AEW business gone in the year plus since she arrived? Triple Nose and Nick Khan, no relation, and whoever else, they'd be laughing behind the scenes, and who can blame them? Now, some heroes, some white knights, will say I have a hate boner for old BMW's Lottie. Wrong. Unlike you with your 1-inch clitoris you call a boner, you strum all day to images on your phone, most of which you pay for as tributes probably. I have this fascinating thing, you should try it sometime, it's very good. It's called self-control.
But are you still master of your domain?
I am king of the county.
And I can go about my day normally, and only get a stiffy when it's appropriate. No, what I do have a hate for, very strong word, but we'll go with it, what I'm a hater for, as the kids say, is how something fun and cool, and frankly unapologetically masculine traditionally, like professional wrestling, has been hijacked by this girl boss BS that killed Star Wars at killing Marvel right now, and it's killing just about everything else it's ever touched.
Put a ticket in and make a name gay!
Where apparently we can't get rosters full of strong badass men and unapologetically hot women anymore, heaven forbid. Men who are larger than life tough and women who are pretty happy to just be sexy women, I don't know. No, now we have indie CrossFit bro men booked to talk about their stupid feelings non-stop before they go and get a coffee with their other man-bun friends. And women who think they can wrestle like men. Every once in a while, obviously there are women's talents who are elite. I'm not pretending there aren't. And those that are, that's really cool. It's an accomplishment, obviously. Great stuff. This lady ain't one of them. Alright, that's the problem. And overall, long term, when we look back at this era of wrestling in the years to come, stars like Mercedes Moné will be to blame. Overrated hams who believe their own hype and force their boring, clumsy, ratings-killing nonsense on the rest of us. And if you don't like it, well, let me tell you something. You're just a no-good sexist, fascist, conservative. Oh. The thing is, though, with those words, everyone's getting past the point of caring now. These labels, they actually mean next to nothing. Most of us just want to watch a bit of telly and be entertained. And it's because of that that the ratings are dropping, and interest in talents like this is heading ever the quicker towards being non-existent. Someone tell Tony Khan to be more careful with his father's wallet next time.